I write this now in the safety of my aunt and uncle's home, and what a wonderful home it is. This home is perhaps the finest home in our entire village. It is so old and grand with its beautiful mahogany floors and splendid brick fireplace. A fireplace made for a king, I would say. It was so kind of them to take me in like this, especially on such short notice. But what should I expect from a family as noble as ours? We are of the finest stock, us Kiplings. And oh, how thrilled I was to see Cousin Clementine again. She is such a beautiful girl. The most beautiful girl in the entire village, I would say. What with her golden curls and bright blue eyes, I do believe that her eyes could put a sapphire to shame. And of course, I could not forget her brother Albert. How long it had been since I saw him last. He was such a handsome boy. It was an incredible reunion for everyone. My aunt and uncle even asked me to say grace at dinner, and oh, how proud I was. Us Kiplings are a particularly holy bloodline. Mother always said that God himself blessed our family with his right hand and guided us with his left. We were chosen by him above all other families in the village. That is why it is such a privilege to lead my cousins in grace. May the burning man bless us with his light. May he always follow our footsteps, I prayed. Amen, we all said. It was a great honor for me. And greater still was dinner itself. Auntie Kipling is perhaps the finest cook in the entire village. And could you imagine my excitement when I learned of the feast she prepared? The dining room was covered with delicacies of every kind. There was salted pork and roasted duck and platter upon platter of quail eggs, and pheasant eggs, and eggs of every other kind. My cup never wanted for wine, and all of this was prepared in my name. It was a princely feast. Perhaps greatest of all was the news from Cousin Clementine. What a surprise it was when she told us she was with child. Oh, a happy day. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect that. And by her brother Albert, no less. What a union that will be. With their noble Kipling blood and family pedigree, could there be finer breeding? Her parents were so proud. I don't think I've ever seen parents so proud before. Cousin Clementine paid me the courtesy of showing me her family portraits. Oh, how beautiful they were. I'd never seen tintype portraits that looked so magnificent. There was Cousin Matthew and Aunt Victoria, and Cousins Malcolm and Maxwell, and Uncle Oscar, and Uncle Horace, and Grandfather Jasper, and a great many others that I recognized. Generation upon generation of family pictures for everyone to admire. They were so grand and noble too. Maybe even as marvelous as my brother's photograph, I thought. That will be us one day, Clementine sighed. What a happy thought that was. They let me stay in the guest bedroom, which was as big a bedroom as I had ever seen. It was so wide and cozy, I felt right at home. I had never laid in a bed as comfortable before. It was so soft and warm too. Maybe the softest and warmest bed in the entire town, I thought. The sheets were made of the finest linen, and my blanket was so large that it swallowed me whole. There was an absolutely splendid pair of French windows overlooking the entire town. If I swung the doors open in the afternoon, I could see the sun set behind the church. It had such a wonderful steeple, so tall and ornate. Our village was so charming, I thought. And at night I'd like to count the windows lit inside each house. They were all wonderful houses, but none so wonderful as this one. The only house I didn't like very much was my old family home. It was always dark, and its windows were never lit. I wondered where Mother and Father were now, and what lay inside its depths. I could still see it from here, and I have never felt so unsettled. Louis's tintype was hidden safely under my bed. Not even Cousin Clementine knew about that. It was not much of a challenge at all to fall asleep in such a comfortable bed, and it took me only a moment to drift away. But my sleep was interrupted. I thought I heard something scratching at my door, but it was gone in a moment, so I closed my eyes and fell back asleep. Then I heard it again, and this time I knew that I was not mistaken. It was so dark, and my room was so wide that I could barely see anything at all at first. But the Burning Man works in mysterious ways, God bless him, and he granted me a full moon last night. Perhaps it was the brightest moon I had seen all summer. I could not tell where the sound was coming from, but to my great surprise, I discovered the shadow of a man outside my window. That beautiful white moon in the sky lit his body like a candle. He was so tall and emaciated, The moon was not bright enough to see his face, but his shoulder tilted sharply to one side, and I could see that his leg was bent at an angle that no leg should bend. I crept from my bed to see who was there. Could it be a burglar? With a home so noble and wonderful as this, I would not put it past a jealous neighbor. As I got closer, I realized that I recognized his face. It was my brother. Oh, happy day! What a miracle it was to see my brother again. I missed him so much. What a pity to see his face so disfigured. It was even more distorted than the last time I had seen him. The tree had certainly changed the shape of his head, I thought, but even then, it seemed as though his skin was slouching a bit more than it had before, like a piece of butter been left out in the sun. His fingernails had grown much longer. They were the longest fingernails in the entire town. They were probably the yellowest fingernails in the entire town, for that matter. "Brother," he whispered to me, "let me in." I loved Brother Cecil more than anything in the entire world, but I am ashamed to say that I hesitated. Something about him was not right. "Cecil," I said, "you're supposed to be dead." Indeed he was. I'd buried him not even 3 days ago, and yet here he was standing at my window. But then he told me something even stranger. "Brother Luther," he said to me, "I have seen the burning man. I have seen him with my own 2 eyes. Oh, how glorious he is, Brother Luther, and you can see him too." Brother Cecil saw the burning man? I could hardly believe my ears. You were such a noble and holy family, though. It made sense that the burning man would choose one of us. "You saw the burning man?" I asked. I couldn't help but inch closer to the door handle as I said it. "I did, brother," he told me, "and he was more magnificent than you could ever imagine. He is so warm and bright. Just let me in, and you'll never have to feel cold again." I wasn't so sure that it was a good idea, but for a moment, I forgot the circumstances and just remembered that he was my big brother. And so, I reached for the door handle, ready to let him in. Just as I touched the brass knob, he said something else to me. "Please let me in, and then give me the tintype under your bed," he said. The tintype? How did Brother Cecil know about the tintype? I loved that tintype, and I had been careful not to tell anyone about it. It was the most magnificent tintype I had ever seen. Out of nowhere, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Auntie Kipling. I couldn't believe it. "Be gone, creature! I banish you from this house," she commanded. And then she drew the curtains over Brother Cecil's face. I didn't hear another peep from him the rest of the night. We went to bed after that, and I couldn't help but feel a little guilty about the whole thing. To refuse Brother Cecil entry into our lovely home? It was a great dishonor. And there was something else that concerned me. Just this morning, I was examining the Kipling family portraits with great interest. They were spectacular, more spectacular than any other family portraits in the entire town. But there was a new family portrait that had not been there yesterday. You might ask, who was in this new portrait? It was me. Should I be worried? When Carol told me that she was going to have a girls' weekend with all her friends, I knew that I had to make my next move carefully. Act too excited about the news, and she might jump to the conclusion that I wanted her gone. Act too disappointed, and she might get the idea that I actually like to spend my Friday nights watching Flip or Flop reruns. No, I knew that I had to play this one cool. I told her it was fine. Not to worry, I said. I would handle things at the house. "Go have fun with your friends," I told her. "Enjoy yourself." "Okay," my wife smiled. "And take care of Sadie for me." Sadie was our 4-year-old Pomeranian, and when I say our Pomeranian, what I really mean is my wife's Pomeranian. That dog absolutely hated me. Not even 10 seconds after my wife finished backing out of the driveway, I was already texting my buddies Eric and Mark to come over and have some fun. Girls' night out could only mean one thing: guys' night in. We ordered pizza and wings and powered up my old Nintendo 64. We had Super Smash Brothers, beer, and absolutely no supervision whatsoever. Could this get any better? Around midnight, I heard Sadie barking obnoxiously in the kitchen. God, I hated that dog. Her bark was so shrill, I swear it could wake the dead. I told Eric and Mark to hold on. I needed to go let Sadie out and I'd be right back. When I picked her up, however, she snapped at my hand. "Ouch!" I yelped as my friends laughed at me. "I guess we know who's boss around here," Mark said sarcastically. My buddies put their controllers down and followed me as I attempted to track down Sadie. It wasn't exactly a difficult task with her irritating barking, and we quickly located her in front of the basement door. Sadie was the type of dog that liked to bark at everything, but even this was peculiar behavior coming from her. The hairs on the back of our necks stuck up like needles, and she was baring her teeth toward the basement with murderous intent. I had never seen her so worked up before. "Come on, girl," I said, and we walked downstairs to see what the problem was. What we found at the bottom of the stairs was unlike anything I had ever seen in my entire life. There was a gigantic slit suspended in midair, maybe 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. It looked almost as if somebody had taken the fabric of space and ripped it open like an old rag. Blue-green light with the texture of flames twirled around inside. I was at a loss for words. I had no idea how to conceptualize what this thing was or why it was in my basement, or even worse, how I was possibly going to explain this to my wife. It looked like some kind of wormhole had opened up inside of my basement. The others seemed to agree. Whatever it was, Sadie didn't like it one bit. She paced back and forth menacingly, growling at the large opening, but careful not to get too close. Eric wanted to know what would happen if we threw something inside. After some searching, he managed to procure a muddied tennis ball from the nearby shelf. He took the ball and gave it a soft toss into the abyss, which swallowed the ball whole. It was gone. "Hold on, I have an idea," I said. I grabbed an old coil of rope and tied it to a 10-pound kettlebell from my home gym. With a heave, I tossed the weight into a portal and watched as it disappeared from behind the flames. For a second, nothing seemed to happen. Then something about the portal changed. Its flames, once a bluish-green color, deepened into a menacing red. The rope, which until then had remained limp in my hands, started to twitch as the hole sucked in the rest of the coil. At first, it unraveled slowly, but picked up speed over time, until in just a couple of seconds the rope was peeling off like a spool of fishing line. I panicked, unsure what to do, and tried to stop the rope with my bare hands, but it quickly became apparent what a bad idea that was. The rope uncoiled furiously in my hands, ripping into my palms that caused me to yelp in pain. "Help!" I shouted, looking at Eric and Mark. The two of them grabbed a section of rope with me, and we heaved backwards with all of our weight. Something was tugging on the other end of the line, causing the cord to stretch taut. So much pressure was built up in the strands that I could hear a groaning noise as if the fibers rubbed against one another. Eric and Mark were struggling to breathe behind me, and I could only assume their faces were red from the strain. Suddenly, the rope snapped in half, sending the three of us flying backwards in a tumbled mess, while the rest of the rope was sucked up like a spaghetti noodle. Sadie went berserk, barking furiously at the portal, before leaping in after the rope. She was gone before I could even stop her. I called out to her in my sweetest voice, even offering her a treat in the hopes that by some miracle she might leap out, but had no such luck. "Oh my God, my wife is going to kill me," I groaned. To add insult to injury, there was suddenly an audible click, and all the lights shut off. Things just kept getting better and better. Save for the eerie glow coming from the portal, everything was pitch black. "Come on, guys," I said. "I'll reset the breaker." It was hard to see, which made it rather difficult to navigate the maze of supplies that built up over the years. Eric and Mark kept bumping into each other behind me, and one of them, I think it was Mark, almost fell over. "Jesus, Mark," I heard Eric say. "Your breath smells like shit. Have you ever heard of a toothbrush?" Eric was right. I could smell his breath from here. God, it was disgusting. The man was an absolute garbage disposal for food. When we reached the breaker, I still couldn't see much of anything, so I asked to borrow somebody's phone. I felt a stiff hand tap me on the back, followed by the weight of an iPhone perched on my shoulder. "Thanks," I said, and flicked on the backlight to see what I was doing. Half thinking it wouldn't work and half praying that it would, I reset the main breaker, and to my amazement, the lights flickered back on. Something was changed now, though. I looked behind me and I realized that Mark was still here, but Eric had disappeared. Mark threw me a confused look and we walked back to the portal with a panic. Had something happened? Things got even weirder when I saw that the mysterious wormhole, which had been there only moments ago, had now vanished. It was gone, missing as if it had never been there in the first place. Eric wouldn't have jumped through the portal, would he? Or even worse, what if something came out and grabbed him? I could feel sweat starting to roll down my forehead as I considered progressively worse possibilities. A wave of relief poured over me when I heard the basement door opening at the top of the stairs and saw Eric standing there with a stupid grin on his face. "Went to get a flashlight," he explained sheepishly. I surveyed the area one last time where the portal had been before, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating or having a psychotic break. We went back upstairs and the three of us gathered around the kitchen table. I looked at each of them seriously, searching for some kind of explanation. "We all saw what I think we saw, right?" I asked. Eric and Mark nodded their heads, and I sighed, partly out of relief that I wasn't going crazy, and partly out of fear from what we had just seen. "Look," I said, pointing at each of them, "not a word about this to my wife. I don't even know how I'm going to tell her about any of this. She's going to think I'm on drugs or something." Eric and Mark each agreed. They wouldn't say anything to anyone until I had the chance to talk to Carol. The two of them waited a couple of minutes, but I could tell they were eager to get out of here. We high-fived each other goodbye, and then Eric and Mark ran out of the house as fast as they could. I can't say I blamed them. We were all pretty spooked. I, for my part, slept with a shotgun next to me that night. The next morning, I woke up to a buzz from my cell phone. I expected it to be a text from my wife telling me that she was coming home soon. I looked over and realized that it wasn't from my wife at all. It was a text from Mark. "Hey buddy," it read. "Sorry I missed your message. Christine and I went camping up in the Adirondacks for the weekend and cell phone reception was terrible. I can't believe I missed guys' night. Maybe we can do it next weekend? I promise to make it up to you guys. Hope you and Eric had fun without me."